Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. In the studio this evening, I have also my co-broadcaster, Kenny McBride. Welcome back, Kenny.
Hello.
And sitting on my left, where he wants to always be, apparently, is Chris McCusker from the SNP Socialist Group. And this afternoon, I beg your pardon, the hot news is that on a visit to Brussels today, Nicola Sturgeon has said that Scotland is already taking steps to hold a referendum on independence and believes it's a matter of when rather than if the country separates from the rest of Britain. We should agree a process between ourselves and the UK government for a referendum in line with the clear mandate given by the people of Scotland, the First Minister told a news conference on her first foreign trip since the UK left the European Union. We are taking in Scotland the steps required to ensure that a referendum can be held that is legal and legitimate, so the result can be accepted and agreed both at home and internationally, she continued, adding that one such step was testing the potential question to put to voters. The First Minister pointed to the general election in December in which the SNP won 80% of the seats in Scotland on a pro-independence platform as a clear sign that the Scottish people did not see a future shared with the rest of Britain. Ms Sturgeon said it was not clear if Scotland could hold a referendum without acceptance by the British government, which so far refuses to contemplate another independence ballot. I'm not ruling that out at some point. If the impasse continues, it may have to be tested. But putting things in the hands of courts is always uncertain in terms of the outcome. But actually, what we should be doing is seeking agreement, she said. The First Minister also gave a speech to an audience, including EU diplomats at the European Policy Centre. She said that Scotland's task now that membership of the EU has ended, was to find a voice as an independent nation, which could take its place on the world stage. In the meantime, the Scottish Government will use its devolved powers to maintain, as far as it is able, the closest possible ties to the EU, whilst working towards independence. Earlier, the First Minister met EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier to discuss the EU and UK talks, which are due to begin next month. She spoke to the EU Executive Vice President, Margrethe Vestager, about the EU's Green Deal and COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow, the dynamics of digitisation and artificial intelligence. The First Minister said afterwards, "It was already clear, and it has been reaffirmed to me in the constructive meetings I have had today, that there is a genuine goodwill in the EU towards Scotland. We're leaving the EU at a time when we have never benefited from it more, and we have never needed it more to achieve our ambitions. On this visit to Brussels, I've made it clear how important it is for Scotland to remain close to the EU." So I think, Kenny, I think I'll come to you first with this. Did it surprise you that Nicola Sturgeon made this trip today? It seemed to catch people a little off guard.
Well, I mean, I think certainly the Scottish Government's strategy is to effectively remain, for Scotland to effectively be an EU nation. That's what she's trying to achieve, is to make people in the EU think of Scotland as still a member, or, you know, will be a member very soon. The noises we've heard coming out of Brussels since the Brexit vote have been increasingly positive about independence, increasingly positive about Scotland as a whole. So that's something I think that she's going to need to build on, because again, we're going to need to have that argument in place when an independence referendum does happen. The only thing that concerns me there, I mean, I think it's very positive. She's very well liked, and that helps a lot. The only thing that concerns me is this: she still seems to be reluctant to consider having a referendum without the permission of the UK. And that, to me, I think the assertion that she should make is, we have a right and we will hold a referendum.
To be more positive about it, rather than just saying it's a possibility.
And if the British government says no, then we'll find a way around that.
Okay.
That to me is the position she should be taking. But then she's a highly successful professional politician, and I'm not, so who knows?
Okay, Chris, I had something I was going to ask you here. Do you think that Nicola Sturgeon being seen in Europe in this way on European television is a clear strategy by the SNP to have the First Minister seen on television in primetime news, or is it just coincidental?
No, it's a masterstroke. I mean, let's not make any bones about it. Nicola knows exactly what she's doing, and I would never want to accuse Nicola of playing to the crowd, because she doesn't have to do that. But on this, you know, she clearly is. You know, I mean, Kenny's right that the mood music is all about setting Scotland to be, you know, closer than Britain to the EU in this time of limbo. Do you
think also the aim of this is, first of all, to give Mr Johnson a jolt when he sees Nicola Sturgeon talking before the EU even starts talking to the UK, talking to the First Minister of Scotland before any of that happens?
I don't think so. No, I don't actually think that she's ever she's actually considering, you know, what Boris Johnson is feeling. You know, she is, you know, she's quite clearly, as I say, it's an absolute masterstroke here. And make no mistake, Nicola first and foremost thinks about Scotland, then thinks about what Boris Johnson might think, or you know, whoever. First and foremost is forging the links with the EU.
But also being seen publicly to do so.
Well, again,
not just by Scottish television viewers, by British television viewers who will be seeing this footage today everywhere.
You know, they will make, you know, what they will out of it, and they will no doubt they will be scathing about the fact that she's, you know, allowed to wander around the EU, carte blanche, and all the rest of it.
The Daily Mail readers will be demanding that she's her passport is taken away.
You can almost write the headlines yourself, Gordon. But you know, now that we're out of the EU, it doesn't matter two shinies what Nicola does or who she talks to. First and foremost, you know, she could turn into Boris and say, I was there to promote Scotland because I'm fearful about any trade negotiation that you're going to do that's going to affect my country. End of. That's it.
And of course, in the devolution settlement, it doesn't say anything about the First Minister going on foreign visits to the European Union.
No, it doesn't.
Whether she can or can't, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. But you know what? I can almost write Jackson Carlaw's speech for Thursday. You know, because he'll be giving it. You know, she's off on her jolly jaunts. She's not getting on with the day job, and you know, just furthering her case of independence. Well, actually, Jackson, that's quite right. Yes, she is on her jollies, but she's promoting Scotland. Yes, she's, you know, away to the EU, but she's got a good team behind her that are running the country, you know, in her absence.
Can I stop you there?
Sorry, I was just going to say, she was elected on a mandate to deliver an independence referendum. That is the day job.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, that is the day job.
Yeah.
Because until we get that done, it's going to be very, very difficult to solve an awful lot of the other problems that they would call the day job.
What you tried telling that to Jackson Carlaw or Willie Rennie?
What I wanted to ask you, Kenny, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was actually about Joanna Cherry, because Joanna Cherry has come out and said that she believes that it's time for legislation to be passed that will put this to the test. In other words, she wants the legislation to be written and passed. But it's not been coming from the First Minister. This has been coming from Joanna Cherry, and I think this is interesting that there's a division of labour between the two.
Yeah,
perhaps it has to come from. From Joanna Cherry.
The argument that some people make is that this is a huge split in the SNP
don't think that,
between the fundamentalists and the gradualists, which is a story that has been part of how the SNP are described by the mainstream media for decades. That's always been something. They've always tried to drive this wedge
to split them,
between people who are, you know, let's take some radical steps towards independence and let's creep towards independence. I don't necessarily think that there is that great division. I think Joanna Cherry partly is positioning herself as a future contender for the leadership. I mean, that's part of it.
That's what struck me about the situation as well.
But it may well be. I mean, they're not daft, the SNP. They're politically smart operators, and it's not impossible that Joanna Cherry has been tasked with give some red meat to the base, get this idea out there as a strategy.
Do you think she's trailing her coat a little bit with this?
See what the reaction is. And that gives them a wee bit of information to work with going
basically
forward.
Testing the temperature of the water, the sea.
I think that might be part of it because Sturgeon is saying there will be a referendum this year, and to get that done any other way, I think is impossible. So,
well, if that was the intention, then from what I've seen on social media today, it's succeeding.
Yeah, well,
it's succeeding in spades as well by the looks of things.
I think that it could be possibly a two-pronged attack. That Nicola is still going with the softly approach.
Well, she's doing the
wooing
game of Europe.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
playing
she doesn't have
stateswoman.
to woo anyone. I mean, she's just again this year. She's just been voted the best politician in Britain.
She's nation building.
So,
really.
yeah. But obviously, undoubtedly, with Joanna's background in the judicial system. She will be looking at this with a keen interest. If it gets to the situation where we have no alternative but to take it to court. Now, so I mean, I would fully expect Joanna, being as professional as she is, to have done the groundwork for that, rather than sort of like a frantic phone call from Holyrood to Joanna. Oh, right, this isn't going to work. Let's have a legal look at it. Whereas Joanna can say, well, I've already had a look at this, and I know who to take it to, and we can build traction that way.
Surely a precedent has already been set with the case against the prorogation of Parliament, where Joanna Cherry challenged Boris Johnson on the legality of his actions.
Yeah.
First of all, through the Scottish Court of Session, and then that went to the English Supreme Court, and they couldn't counter it. They couldn't overrule what the Scottish judges had said.
Well, you can't overrule justice.
Well, the thing is that the two law systems are separate and supposed to be equal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the legal case. I think ideally it should have happened last year, but we are where we are, and I think it's a win-win situation for the independence movement. If the Scottish government wins the case, then the referendum goes ahead as planned, and that's all fine.
And if they lose,
they probably win. But I think the very fact of the Scottish government passing a law and the British government taking them to court to say you're not allowed to vote, I think that will be the thing that opens the floodgates to a lot of soft no voters moving over.
That would be the mother of democracy saying, "We're not going to let you have democracy anymore."
But I mean, that is
it doesn't suit our purpose.
That is the mantra of Boris Johnson at the moment. The only other thing that I would possibly disagree with Kenny slightly.
Disagree?
Is the fact that at this moment in time, I think it's disingenuous to moot anyone as a possible contender in Nicola Sturgeon at this moment in time. We're not there yet.
I think maybe that's something that the media is speculating about,
the media,
but it may not be true.
It could be said that anyone sitting on the SNP benches at Holyrood is a possible contender for
of course,
leadership. Joanna's got her qualities are well documented, and she's got her successes behind her.
She's like a legal bulldog.
Yeah. But I wouldn't. I don't. Not that I don't like John Swinney, but again, John Swinney could be seen as a kind of like a Marmite character. And I know that we're not here to discuss possible contenders. I'm just saying that at this moment in time, Nicola's, you know, the big cheese.
There is no challenge to Nicola.
You know, let's get away from all this.
She is the leader, and she's very popular.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not predicting an immediate challenge. I'm just suggesting that maybe
a little
there's a
observation.
long-term thought.
Don't get me wrong. I'll put it out here. You know, I'm Nicola's #1 comrade on Twitter. I could be Joanna's #1 comrade as well.
Fair enough. Well. Let's move along. I think we've chatted this one out, and it is very interesting. But we're now going to go from sturgeon to salmon in an interesting segue.
That's cheesy. That is cheesy.
The Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation has said Boris Johnson's damaging Brexit deal will place huge unnecessary financial and bureaucratic burdens on the UK's biggest food export and cost the industry up to £9 million a year. The Scottish salmon industry, estimated to be worth over £1 billion to the Scottish economy in 2018, faces the prospect of high tariffs and lengthy border checks thanks to the Tories' decision not to align with EU regulations going forward. The SSPO has estimated the cost of this for Scottish farmed salmon will be up to £8.7 million per year, depending on the amount charged by councils for each environmental health certificate and the number of certificates required per lorry load. Brexit could mean processing and signing of 100,000 costly EHCs every single year. And commenting, the SNP MSP Stuart Stevenson said, "This inept Tory government has failed to offer any assurances to the industry that's worth over £1 billion every year to Scotland's economy. Throughout this entire process, Scotland's voice and interests have been ignored, and now the arrogance of Boris Johnson and his cronies risks costing the UK's biggest food export millions in lost profits. Without an agreement for a frictionless border with the EU, we'll see lorry loads of top quality Scottish salmon going to waste as drivers sit in enormous queues at Dover waiting on customs checks. It's time for Scotland to escape this devastating path that puts jobs, businesses and industries on the line and to secure its place as an independent European nation." So Mr. Stevenson there underlining the importance of the frictionless border that we currently have with the European Union. I think we talked about this in a previous programme about the need, particularly for seafood, to be taken very quickly, to be transported on the day that it's harvested. Is this, do you think, overstating the case, or is this a realistic estimate?
Well, I mean, obviously, the Scottish Government is going to highlight dangers as much as it can. I mean, there's political value to them in making Brexit sound as bad as possible, but clearly, it's going to be a big problem. The further we diverge from EU regulations, the more hurdles there are to get over in order to sell into the EU. The EU is by far our biggest market for virtually everything, but salmon, I'm sure the vast majority of exports are going to the EU. I mean, I doubt we're sending tons of salmon to Australia. So clearly anything that makes it more difficult, anything that makes it look, well, you know, actually it's going to be slightly cheaper now to get the Norwegian salmon, even if it's not quite as good. And that, you know, that means, you know, 1-2 companies start falling, 1 or 2 farms start to fail. It has a knock-on effect to those communities, to the whole industry, and that, you know, the snowball effect of that, you know, from just you're going to have to wait at the border for a couple hours while we check all your certificates. The knock-on effects of that, kind of as you go further back up the food chain, if you like, can be huge.
And the queue is going to lengthen and lengthen.
Everything just becomes more complicated. The costs go up, the time becomes longer. Everything is going to get more difficult, and that's
surely. I mean, Chris, maybe you could take up this point. One of the things that struck me about this story is that every time we transport food anywhere, it then starts to produce more carbon dioxide because we have to take it further away from the source where it was grown. Surely it's actually better to trade with your near neighbours because then you don't have the food miles, you don't have to cart the stuff halfway around the world.
Well, I mean, that's correct.
Better for the environment.
There is a certain percentages, a certain percent of the Scottish food, the Scottish fishing produce, which will go to America, which will go to Australia, which will go to Thailand and all the rest
of
it.
We know that salmon does go much further afield, but usually it's smoked salmon or it's preserved.
Usually smoked salmon.
Not always, but
it'll be cured salmon and stuff like that. You know, but the point that I was going to make is that I know that there are restaurants in the Champs-Élysées that you can, you know, buy Scottish salmon and it is €20 dearer than Norwegian salmon.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Purely because it's Scottish.
Yeah.
It is a premium brand.
We also talked about this recently, about the brand now being erased by the British Union flag on everything.
Well, that's what they're trying to do, yeah. But you know, and they will try and do that, and that again could possibly end up in, you know, some sort of legal wrangle as well, because of so many pieces of produce are actually, you know, quintessentially Scottish. But the point that I always want to make was that I think it's high time that you know, the likes of Stuart Stevenson is talking about this and all the rest of it. At the same time that Nicola is in Brussels, let's get a wee salvo between ourselves and our Belgian neighbours and see if we can forage you know, a crossing between Rosyth into Zeebrugge and then, you know, from Zeebrugge down into France. You know, why does it have to go through the English ports? It is a well-known fact that a percentage of Scottish produce it gets exported to England and then it gets discounted as a Scottish export because it is being exported from England.
Well, just to clarify something here, that the information on this report has not come initially from the Scottish Government, it's come from the Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation. So these are their estimates for what will happen to their industry, and the Scottish Government is trying to respond to this in a positive way. And as you say, having Nicola Sturgeon visiting the European Union in Brussels and talking to the top people today, I don't think it's any accident when you hear this kind of story.
Well, no, because that'll be what you know, one of many issues that Nicola will be discussing. And it's all about that just-in-time arrival status for our produce. Do you know? Like, I mean, haggis can hang about for six months. God, it takes you 3 months to catch one of the buggers. Do you know what I mean? But with salmon, you know, as soon as it's caught, as soon as you can get that to the table, the better, because you're getting more bang for your buck for fresh salmon, as opposed to, you know, the packets of smoked, the cured salmon, you know, and all the rest of it. So you know, I mean, just in time is, you know, vital for the fishing industry.
Well, I mean, it also highlights as well how different the views of the fishing industry are in different parts of it. You know,
of course, there's different types of fishing, though, isn't there?
Yeah, we've heard so much during the Brexit campaign about how a handful of people in the northeast were pro-Brexit because the CFP was terrible. But as you see, the salmon producers and a lot of the West Coast fishermen
are all shellfish,
all saying, no, it's all about the markets. It's not about the waters. We've got the waters, and that's fine. It's the markets that are the big problem, and you know, but that just got ignored during the Brexit debate.
Well, I tell you, let's leave fishing for the moment, and we're going to have a look now across the Irish Sea to Ireland, and it's Sinn Féin has declared victory in Ireland's general election, and it's called for talks with the other main parties to form a coalition government. Its leader, Mary Lou McDonald, has urged Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to start negotiations with the Republican Party as the scale of its breakthrough confirmed a realignment of Irish politics. Sinn Féin has won the election. We have won the popular vote, McDonald said, as counting votes to fill seats in the Dáil Éireann, the Parliament's lower house, continued in the constituencies across the country. Although full results from Ireland's multi-member constituencies are not expected until late tonight or tomorrow, Sinn Féin won 24.5% of the first preference vote in Saturday's election, almost doubling its share from 2016, after harnessing voter anger at homelessness, soaring rents and fraying public services. Fine Gael slid to 20.9%, and the main opposition party, Fianna Fáil, slipped to 22.2%, widely perceived as punishment for having propped up Varadkar's minority administration in a confidence and supply deal. The Greens, Independents and small left-wing parties accounted for the rest. The turnout was 62.9%, down from 65.2% in the 2016 election. The fragmented results will produce a hung parliament with no party close to 80 seats, the number required for a majority and stable government in the 160-seat chamber, which includes the Speaker. Sinn Féin, having fielded too few candidates to fully translate support into seats, is expected to end up with about 36 seats, similar to Fine Gael. Fianna Fáil is expected to win 40 seats, making its leader Michael Martin the favourite to emerge as the Taoiseach after negotiations that could last weeks or even months. MacDonald told RTE that her preference was to form a government without either of the two formerly biggest parties. But she said she would speak to Varadkar and Martin because that's what grown-ups do. She called for an end to the era of her party, formerly led by Gerry Adams, being frozen out of coalitions. The democratic thing is for them to speak to me and to stop this business of saying Sinn Féin can be put on the margin. So many people now have chosen us to represent them. Varadkar has ruled out a Fine Gael pact with Sinn Féin, citing its left-wing policies and past IRA links, and floated a centrist alliance with Fianna Fáil. The former Fine Gael deputy leader James Riley said the party needed to reflect and decide on whether Varadkar should remain leader if it does not form the next government. He told RTE that there were a number of mistakes in a campaign fraught with own goals, including the controversy over a proposed and then cancelled Royal Irish Constabulary commemoration. During the campaign, Martin said that Fianna Fáil would not enter government with Fine Gael or Sinn Féin, but since Sunday has sounded more flexible, suggesting either scenario could happen. Dara Callery, Fianna Fáil's Director of Elections, told RTE his party would talk with Sinn Féin about a programme for government. We will see what programme they put together. We certainly will engage with them, and we're not going to refuse to talk to them. Brendan Howlin, the leader of the Labour Party, who appeared on course for about half a dozen seats, said that any viable government would need two of the big three parties. Ultimately, we either have to have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together, or Sinn Féin with one of those parties. That will happen, in my judgment. I think that is the only stability that can be offered. Another election would hurt Ireland, he said. Bread and butter issues dominated the campaign, which virtually ignored Northern Ireland and Brexit. But Sinn Féin said it wished to promote its defining issue, United Ireland, in any future government. An exit poll found that 57% of people supported Sinn Féin's desire to hold referendums on unity on both sides of the border in the next 5 years. At a victory celebration in Dublin, at the Count Centre, Desi Ellis, the re-elected Sinn Féin TD and former IRA member, joined supporters in singing the rebel song, "Come Out Ye Black and Tans." An election count officer in Galway asked jubilant Sinn Féin supporters to lower the tricolour, saying it was neither the time nor the place for symbols. Unionist leaders in Northern Ireland have so far largely refrained from commenting on Sinn Féin's breakthrough. One exception is Steve Aitken, the Ulster Unionist Party leader, who called Sinn Féin a hard left party with less than transparent relationship with its violent past. Ireland faced uncertainty, he said. Our neighbours are living in interesting, if worrying, times. Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach and Fine Gael leader, faced a call from Paddy Coffey, a former Fine Gael TD and junior minister, to quit as party leader. Simon Coveney called the voters' verdict harsh, but backed Varadkar's continued leadership. Another senior party figure, Pascal Donohoe, said that Fine Gael could end up forming another government. So dramatic times, I think, Kenny, in Ireland's history here, with sudden surge in support for Sinn Féin.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is it's now 24 years since the IRA laid down its arms.
So the Good Friday Agreement came into effect.
The Good Friday Agreement came into effect in 98, 99.
Yep.
So and obviously that doesn't affect Ireland in quite the same way as it does the North, but there's a generation of voters coming through for whom the Troubles have never been a part of their lives.
They're just history that the older members of the family have told them about.
So I think the kind of stigma around Sinn Féin is not there to the same extent that it was. Mary Lee McDonald had no connections to the IRA. I mean, Gerry Adams was always, quite a divisive figure, a guy who had not been exactly honest about his role with the IRA itself. So I think that's part of it. Part of it, obviously, is that they are a left-wing party, and Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are not. They're centre to centre right, and don't actually have a lot between them in policy terms. So when things are bad, people tend to look for something different, and that I think is a big part of it as well.
Well, one of the things you hit on there, the idea that Sinn Féin was more of a left-wing party. I wanted to put this to you, Chris, because
why?
I've been reading a little bit more about this story before I came in, and one of the things that became evident was that people in the Republic were very unhappy at the fact that house prices had doubled recently, and that there is a massive housing shortage. There is a great deal of homelessness in the Republic. And they blame it largely on the sort of neoliberal government of Leo Varadkar ignoring the social needs of the people in this rush to become this European centre of, banking and commerce.
Aye.
Do you think that this is part of the reason now why Sinn Féin have become, the biggest surprise in this election?
It should be welcomed that there is a party that is discussing the fact that the bread and butter issues will never go away, and things like homelessness, the housing issues, the basic infrastructure and all the rest of it will always be, I think, to my mind, will always be owned by the socialists.
Yeah.
Right. It is for me very, very black and white that if you're a capitalist, you're not given two hoots about what is happening on the other side of the street. You're only caring about the fact that the lights are on your side of the street.
We hear quite a lot about Ireland being a Celtic tiger and having this great economy. But until recently, I don't think people in Scotland were aware of the social problems that the Republic has been facing as a result of their policies in this regard. They seem to be, anyways, having looked at this, to be making the same mistakes in Dublin as the Tories are making in London.
Yeah, but I think, not just Leo Varadkar, I think past Taoiseachs have been guilty of overcompensating how much of dereliction was left in Southern Ireland, and how much that they heavily rely on, as you say, the financial institutions, and the wealth that comes from that. I mean, make no mistake, socialism as a singular issue cannot survive without the coexistence of capitalism.
You need money to run an economy.
You need money in order to run an economy. But by the same token, and this is why I say that it is, it is a black and white issue for me, because where there is capitalism, you will always find socialism, and where there is bread and butter issues, you will find that 9 times out of 10 the capitalists won't address it, but the socialists will.
But the whole point of capitalism is there have to be, in order for a small number of winners to make a lot of money, there have to be an awful lot of losers who don't have any money. That's how the capitalist system works.
That's exactly what I'm saying, is the fact
so
that
one
capitalists...
creates the other.
Yeah, but capitalists are quite happy to pursue their narrative as long as the lights are on their side of the street. If the lights are on the socialist side of the street at the same time,
well, that's
they're not
okay,
really,
but it's not really
they're not
bothering
really, bothered about it. But if the lights go out, they're not rushing to go and fix them.
It's an old attitude problem, Chris, I think, and it's persists everywhere.
Edinburgh
seems to suffer from similar problems.
It also brings into the question of the class system, which is which was once very prevalent in 50s, 60s, and 70s, and latterly it's at the end of the 80s. It's sort of like gone. It seemed to have died out with the London yuppies, shall I say? And now people have got a more social conscience, and I think that you're now finding this in Ireland is that there are people,
young people particularly,
length
feel
and
this
breadth
way.
of Ireland are, as Kenny quite rightly said, leaving the past behind because it wasn't prevalent in their life. And they're only reading it and hearing stories that are handed down, and they're thinking about the real bread and butter issues, as I say, and it's not necessarily just about homelessness and
this is the thing.
They're thinking about global warming and all the rest of it.
The campaign didn't focus on any of the expected topics. It focused on what was wrong in the Republic.
And quite rightly so, because it shows the fact that they won. It actually means that they were engaging with the electorate on those.
This disconnection,
key points.
This disconnection between what the sort of neoliberal politicians think everybody is happy with and what is actually real is always they're always different things. And one of the prime examples of this actually is just in our next story, which is about the Prime Minister's claimed ambition to build a bridge from Scotland to Ireland.
Can I just hold my head?
Before we dissect this, Chris, let me just read you the piece, okay? Downing Street has claimed that ministers are actively looking into Boris Johnson's idea of a road bridge linking Scotland and Northern Ireland, rejecting scepticism from engineers and criticism of the Prime Minister's mixed record on delivering bridges. That's a bit of an understatement, isn't it? The government's officials are carrying out work in relation to the idea of a bridge linking the GB mainland to Northern Ireland, Johnson's spokesman has said, saying that this was being done by a range of officials reporting to Number 10. There is a proper piece of work being carried out into the idea, the spokesman said. It's reporting it into Number 10, but obviously we will take advice from wherever it's needed. He gave no details of when the work would be completed. Mr Johnson, who as London Mayor spearheaded the doomed Garden Bridge project, which cost more than £50 million without work even beginning, first raised the idea of the 20-mile plus bridge between Portpatrick and Larne in Northern Ireland in 2018. He called again for the link during the Conservative leadership campaign, despite engineers expressing scepticism at the idea of building a link over waters more than 300 metres deep in places, parts of which were used by the Ministry of Defence to dump more than 1.5 tonnes of obsolete munitions.
A million.
The plan... million tonnes, is it? 1 million? Is it as much as that?
1 million tonne.
Okay, I stand corrected, sorry. The plan had been seen as a concession to Northern Irish Unionists, especially given their concern at new customs checks between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK under Mr Johnson's Brexit plan. When asked about the bridge by the DUP MP Ian Paisley in the Commons in December, Johnson called it a very interesting idea, and adding, I advise him to watch this space, and indeed to watch the space between the islands, because what he has said has not fallen on deaf ears. Now, as we know, Mr Johnson has been an enthusiast for bridge projects for quite a long time. Unfortunately, none of these blue sky projects that he's dreamt up have ever come to fruition. And when I read this story, my instant reaction was, as a sailing man, I know that the North Irish Channel in places is over 1,400 feet deep, which means that the bridge piers, and you'll need about 20 of them, by the way, to support the bridge, need to be at least 1,400 feet deep under the water before they even actually come to the surface.
I read an article that it would need about 50
for
a 20-mile distance. You would need 50.
I mean, honestly, if you believe that Boris Johnson is ever going to make this happen, then I've got a bridge to sell you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not going to happen.
You think-
It's Boris Johnson talking because
out of that hole in his backside.
more or less, yeah. I mean, it's a piece of nonsense. It would be a massive project, and even if it was possible to, first of all, get rid of all the munitions, B, to build a bridge of that size, you know, I mean, I don't know if there's a 20-mile bridge anywhere in the world.
There's not.
But I don't.
There is
you've
a
then got
plan to build one in the northern hemisphere, but that is the Chinese planning to span a bit of the Barents Sea.
You've got the climate
Which is
for it.
shallow.
I was going to say, you then have to deal with the fact that there's howling winds.
It's going to be shut
coming
most
down
of the
there,
time.
well, a huge amount of the time.
Can you imagine it? Oh, the Ennis Bridge is shut. Oh, blame the Scottish Government.
And you're talking about billions of pounds just to get it, just to make it happen. And you know exactly what the Tories are like about planning big infrastructure projects. Look at HS2, which is already billions of pounds over budget, and we're still decades away from them even really starting work on it.
Well, the other thing is,
probably end up stopping at Birmingham and not actually
Exactly.
going to Leeds.
well, the biggest question here is...
the bridge will stop halfway as well. Well, bridge to nowhere.
There's lots of problems with this. One of the major ones I see is all the ferry companies being put out of business and hundreds or maybe thousands of jobs on both sides of the Irish Sea being lost as a result.
Not only that, I mean, you know, the biggest thing that jumps out for me to start with is that it is a well-known fact that the MOD dumped a whole load of nasty stuff.
Yes,
down
it was
there.
not just explosives. There's nerve gas, there's sarin,
there's
chlorine.
But there are no maps.
No. Because
Right?
they never
So-
could be bothered.
No, of course not.
Chuck
You
it
know
in
what
the
I mean?
sea.
And at the end of the day, Christ, it's only Scotland, you know.
And it's a very busy shipping lane as well. You imagine if you have 20 or 50 bridge piers, the chances of colliding with one of those if a ship gets out of control is enormous.
It's complete pie in the sky, and it's classic Dominic Cummings
A tunnel would be safer.
It has been talked about as another thing to take everybody's mind off of Brexit.
I personally think that the Conservatives are absolutely obsessed with physical links between the parts of what remains of their empire. And this idea of a bridge or a tunnel is some kind of physical connection, so they can't be independent from the UK.
I mean, thinking about it just for a second, that if there was an actual bridge across, the pathway would need to be in the middle, not on the sides, for one major reason. Is because the Orange Marches would need to have plenty of room in order to... Well, do you know what I mean? Because they can walk from Belfast over to
Oh, God, don't encourage them.
Well, another story which is tangentially kind of related to this story is the next one, which is actually regarding the Tories' idea of free ports. Now,
again, that's another...
The SNP has actually called on the Tories to go beyond the rhetoric and set out the full details of its post-Brexit free ports plans, warning that the proposals will do little to offset the devastating damage caused by dragging Scotland and the UK out of the EU and the world's biggest free trade area. The party also warned that the plans must set out clearly how the UK intends to tackle its increased risks posed by money laundering and tax avoidance through the use of free ports. Commenting, the SNP's shadow spokesperson for transport, Gavin Newlands MP, said, "The UK has so far failed to set out sufficient detail of these proposals. However, it's clear that the free ports will not offset the damage caused by dragging Scotland out of the world's biggest free trade area and single market. Beyond the rhetoric, the Tories must engage with the devolved governments, given the impact that plans would have right across the UK. While proposals to drive economic growth and jobs in Scotland is welcome and a considered position is difficult to reach based on the lack of information shared with the SNP Scottish Government. It's vital that if the UK government is intent on pushing ahead with these plans, that it carries out an impact assessment for the devolved nations. That will evidence its stated objectives, and that information is then shared with the devolved governments. There are also serious concerns raised about the risk of free ports being exploited for money laundering and tax avoidance. And this is why it's imperative that the UK government does not simply rush ahead and instead works to ensure that the relevant authorities have the measures and plans in place to prevent this. Now, it's no secret that Westminster has sidelined Scotland throughout the entire Brexit process and has completely ignored its economic and social interests. With Scotland set to be dragged out of the EU by the end of this year and the threat of a no-deal Brexit ever growing, it's clear that the people of Scotland must have a choice over their future as an independent country. Now, Kenny, I'd like to ask you about these free ports. A lot of people, I don't think, really understand what a free port is. I think my understanding was it's an area around the port in which anything that is manufactured can be exported without duty. Is that a reasonable?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
But it's the same story as everything else to do with Brexit. It's the Tories
tax breaks for
the Tories shouting about things they don't understand, never putting any detail to anything, and just saying it'll be fine. We'll do
British
free ports,
yeah.
And they haven't ever thought about it. I mean, I'm reminded of them talking about the actual rules about World Trade Organization status, and Andrew Neil just dismantling Boris Johnson. Like, do you know what it says? No, not really. It's just the same thing, and it's exactly the same as the bridge. It's just this making a noise to try and distract from the fact that they don't have a clue what they're doing.
I mean, where in the world? Because I don't know either.
Where is there a free port?
Where is there a free port in the world? Can
well,
any one of us
I'm
name
told
a
that
free
Prestwick
port?
once was a free port under
Once
Mrs.
was?
Thatcher. But the thing about the free port as an idea is that it's a place where foreign companies can set up near a port without paying any taxes on anything that they make there, and have them re-exported from that port. In other words, it's like a tax haven.
Right.
It is a tax haven, but it's not offshore.
It isn't going to be the fact that you can drive to that free port and get cheap booze and fags.
No, it's not. It's
See,
not.
This is it.
Are you off the idea now?
It's not a duty-free area.
I wasn't on the idea to start with.
No, we're not talking a duty-free area. We're talking about a free port for businesses to operate in without paying taxation to the UK.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a terrible idea then.
But
I would share that opinion. But that's what the Conservatives. This is why they're worried about money laundering and why they're worried about tax evasion.
But like I say, I'm not worried about the idea at all, because I don't believe the Tories have any clue what they're doing.
No,
I don't believe when you don't hear detail from these Tories, it's because they haven't actually got any clue what they're talking about.
And they don't really have a very good track record when it comes to ports anyway, do you know what I mean? If we can remember failing Grayling trying to float the idea
Phantom Ferries.
Phantom Ferries.
Yeah. Well, now I wanted to change the tone a little bit. We have been hammering away at the Conservatives for a rather long time. Time for a slightly better news story, okay? Over £800,000 of funding has been awarded to heritage projects across Scotland. Historic Environment Scotland has announced funding of £842,802 to support conservation repair projects to historic buildings throughout the country. The funding has been awarded to 4 heritage projects, including a £92,387 to Hospital Field House in Arbroath, a 19th century arts and crafts house designed and built by the artist Patrick Allen Fraser. On his death, Allen Fraser left the estate in trust to support artists of the future. In 1902, the estate became one of Scotland's first art schools. Among other recipients announced is the Inverness Creative Academy, which has been awarded £500,000 to repair and revitalise the 125-year-old historic building, which was originally home to the former Inverness Royal Academy. The completed project will offer workspaces for cultural organisations and social enterprises, including long-term office space and flexible co-working spaces as part of a wider regeneration of the city. £141,605 has been awarded to the 15th century Donnelly Castle in Oban for works to the exterior and the main tower. This project forms part of a wider regeneration programme for the castle, which includes the museum and grounds. Comrie Development Trust has also been awarded £108,810 to redevelop the 11 B-listed Nissan huts at the former Culty Bragan I can't even read that, Culty Bragan prisoner of war camp, known as Camp 21. 5 huts will be redeveloped into high-quality, sustainable, self-catering accommodation, and 1 into a furniture store and laundry to support the self-catering offering, and 5 into commercial-let accommodation, including a possible pop-up cafe. The Culty Bragan camp in Perthshire is the only Second World War prisoner of war camp in Scotland which is open to the public. Fascinating stuff.
I think it should be kept as a prisoner of war camp.
And whom would you
Who
put
are
in
we
this
at
prison?
war with that you want to take prisoners?
No, it's not. You know, off of the back of the recent memorial of the Holocaust, I think that, you know, any site that has got visible infrastructure should be kept. It should not be transformed into self-catering flats and all the rest of it. They shouldn't be sticking a laundrette in the middle of it. And
Do you think it should be more like a working museum?
It should be, yes, because it should be, a place of education.
I think they may be missing an opportunity.
School kids could actually go and learn.
Yeah, it's quite a strange idea to think of going your holidays to a prisoner of war camp.
I certainly wouldn't do
Well, there's Cold War bunkers that have been opened up to the public as well in the northeast of Scotland. It's not that unusual, I guess.
The one that I'm really happy about is the one in Inverness. I love the idea of having a really decent place that's dedicated to giving working space to social enterprises. I've been involved for a while, not really anymore, but I was a director of the Glasgow Community Food Network, and finding a place where we could get decently priced, high quality accommodation just so that we had a space to work, a space to keep our stuff, was murder, absolute murder. And I think, you know, Inverness, I'm sure, has plenty of social enterprises that would love to do something more that don't have space to be. And that's a really positive development.
I had, you know, encountered a similar situation in East Renfrewshire with my group, Eastwood Refugee Aid. We couldn't afford to rent anywhere, and we were shifting donations in between the warehouses of Safford. And then you know we.
So you're trying to find a home, a permanent home.
We finally got donated a kind of like a back room of a taxi office in Clarkson. But however, a couple of years down the line, the owner of that taxi office then decided to relocate and move to, you know, a business centre and stuff like that. So we had to get our stuff out, and the stuff now that we've got is spread between about 6 or 8 different houses.
Well, it's interesting though that
lots of charities and stuff are in the same boat.
When we usually hear stories about historic Scotland doing up buildings, we nearly always think of castles and things like that where people come and visit. This is the first time I've really heard of buildings being renovated with the purpose of providing workplaces, workspaces for individuals and for charities and social enterprises.
If people, you know, can regenerate work units for community use, I think is, you know, obviously it's got to be a welcome project because you look at high streets and stuff like that, there's so many empty shops and you know, landlords are just sitting, waiting, hoping that the phone's going to ring and somebody's going to take up these lucrative rentals. You know, which it's just incredible. But you never know. Somebody just might, you know, the restaurant next door just might say, "Oh, we could knock down that wall and expand and stuff like that." You know, and it's a happy payday for the corporate interest. But not for the community interest.
Chris, I'm going to have to draw a line under this one for the moment. We're running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to run to one of our second last stories tonight. And when I first saw this headline, I imagined a sheep tick winning an Oscar because it says Parasite wins Best Film Oscar. The Oscars last night delivered a groundbreaking surprise as the South Korean capitalist satire Parasite earned 4 awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. And this marked the first occasion that a film not in English language has won the top awards. Director Bong Joon-ho paid tribute to other nominated directors, including Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino, in his acceptance speech. And he thanked the Academy for overcoming what he has called the 1-inch barrier of subtitles. Only 10 films not in the English language have ever been nominated for Best Picture before. And it's thought that Parasite's win was in part a reaction to the controversy in recent years over the extreme lack of diversity amongst Oscar nominees. Several other winners found time for political commentary, including Brad Pitt, who won the Best Supporting Actor for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who remarked that his 45-second speech was 45 seconds longer than the former National Security Advisor John Bolton's testimony in the Donald Trump impeachment trial. Joaquin Phoenix, winning Best Actor for Joker, made an impassioned speech about the environment. And Taiki Waititi, who became the first ever Maori to win an Oscar, Best Adapted Screenplay for Jojo Rabbit, which he also directed and starred in as an imaginary Adolf Hitler, dedicated the win to all the indigenous kids all over the world, before later commenting that at the end of the Second World War, if you were a Nazi, you would go to jail. Now you're a Nazi, feel free to have a rally down in the square with your mates. I honestly had never seen Jojo Rabbit, but when I watched the trailers for it, I was baffled by that movie about what they were trying to achieve. Are we surprised to hear that a non-English language film is
Well, I'm actually looking forward to watching Jojo Rabbit, and I secondly take interest in the film industry because my son is in the film industry, and I find it fascinating because he messages me and comes out with these weird and wonderful pictures that I should watch, which are in subtitles. And I think this is actually a breakthrough for, I don't think it will set the heather alight in South Korea, but it was, a major talking point in South Korea, the fact that they had actually sort of broke through. But it was interesting as well to see that 1917, it picked up a couple of Oscars, but not the one for Best Picture.
I think it got best cinematography and best editing.
Its cinematography was superb. I watched 1917 and it is
excellent.
That's
down to the landscape, of course.
Of course, it was filmed in Glasgow and partly written by somebody from Glasgow.
I think it's great news.
Let's hope there's more of these.
There are huge film industries in all over the world. The French film industry, German, Italian, Russian cinema. Throughout history,
Bollywood makes more movies than almost anybody.
Bollywood is the biggest movie industry in the world, and so anything like that. And I love seeing Taika Waititi achieve anything. He's an absolute genius, and I've not seen Jojo Rabbit yet either, but
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Well, listen, to wind up the show tonight, I'm going to hand over to basically to you, because the last item is about the coronavirus, and I believe you have interviewed somebody in connection with this.
Yeah, so yesterday we spoke to Victor Rudenka. Victor is the singer in a band called Rushdani, I think it's pronounced. He's a Belarusian musician. He'd been on tour in China with his band, and they then had to leave because of the coronavirus. The tour got cancelled and everything. So a really charming guy. We have an interview, and then I think afterwards we're going to play you out with a song that they've produced called Coronavirus.
All right.
I think this is the interview coming up now.
Okay, well, I'm just being told that we need to actually tell the viewers that it's time.
Or we're wrapping up altogether.
It's time for us to ask viewers for help with promoting our channel. So for any of the viewers out there who would like to do so, you can support Broadcasting Scotland in the making of programmes by becoming a supporter if you follow the instructions on your screen. Now go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register and you can find out how to help us continue to make excellent programs for you. So hopefully we should be able to finish, Kenny, with your interview. I think I'll just want to hear from our director if we're going to continue. We are going to roll with your interview, Kenny, so here it comes.
So we are joined now on the line from Minsk by Victor Rudenko. Vic, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Kenny?
Well, I'm better than you, I think. I'm not stuck in the house. So, how are you feeling? I mean, you've got no symptoms at the moment.
Not really. I mean, I used to have a little bit when we came back because we just probably got a little bit cold and stuff like that. But it was alarming at the very beginning because we thought that we might be sick, but now it doesn't seem like we're actually we have something serious.
Okay, well that's good news. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your music and why you were in China in the first place.
Well, I think we were in China because it's like maybe 100 times bigger than Belarus, and it's a really good place to play electronic dance music. They have really huge venues, and that was not the first visit that we made. I mean, the band Rostany, that I'm actually the front man and the leader for right now, we had about 4 tours already, and that was one of them, the latest one. And yeah, we were starting the tour, and we actually did all the necessary preparations and started a little bit. And in the middle of this starting point, we actually had to stop. We had maybe about 10 or 15 concerts. That's not too much because when we are on the tour in China, it's almost like every day we have a concert because they have completely crazy club life. They could be, you know, having a party on Monday, and that's okay. And the clubs are like completely full. So yeah, I mean, it was one of the tours that we made to China, and China is really a good place for lots of producers of EDM music, bands that play this kind of music because they're very. They like it, and they have really nice venues, and they have good agencies that make tours for the bands. So this is the reason why we went there.
Great. So whereabouts were you when when the coronavirus first became news?
I think that we came to Zhengzhou. We actually were traveling from Shenzhen to Zhengzhou, and we were about to have 3 concerts very close to, you know, like day after day, and we had a really like packed schedule for the upcoming days, and all of a sudden they said that they are going to cancel, and we were very perplexed why this is happening. And then we learned about the virus and that the government is actually closing down all the venues all over the country. It's like not only the huge ones that we played in, because we actually played in the places like they can house about 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people. But they even closed the small ones, bars, and like everything was closing down. So that was very fast. It was like this in a second.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, what was the government reaction? So everything just shut down kind of overnight?
Probably not overnight, but at least it took maybe 3 days or something, 3-4 days to take like very fast and very, you know, very targeted actions because, you know, this is the good, I wouldn't say like good thing about the Communist Party, but in fact it is. It's like when you don't have to communicate this idea to anybody, you just do it. And they were very fast. They were just we were taking actions very like instantly. It's just like it happened in a couple of days. First we had that there are some ideas about closing down the venues, and then probably in a couple of days they said that everything is going to close down, and there was no certain period for which they said they're going to close them down. So and it happened all over the country.
Yeah,
like very fast. I was not like counting days, but it was like maybe 2 or 3 days that they took the actions.
Okay. So,
it was about public places. I'm not sure about all other things, but it was about bars, about the bars, and about the bars, clubs. All huge places were closed down very fast, and after that, there were actions against like not against, but to shut down big malls, like things that people not necessarily need. It's like you don't have to buy too many fancy clothes when you have virus. So they decided it for people. Like nobody was asked. I guess they just took very fast actions to stop the virus.
Yeah, and the Chinese people that you were kind of working with, what was their reaction?
Well, the thing is that most of the agencies, the big one and the small ones, they understood that they're going to lose a lot of money because of that. And some of the agencies, at least the ones that we know, were trying to keep their artists inside China because they realized that. When you have lots of promotion going on and you've done huge work, and you have to stop everything, it means lots of losses. And most of the agencies were not very happy, of course, about this, and they asked the artists to wait inside of China. And it was just the same about us at the very beginning, but we just decided that our life is more important than just trying to earn some money and may continue the tour, because it was really, it was obvious that nothing's going to work very fast.
Yeah. So when did you first hear about it, and then how long did it take before you actually left China?
Well, we had to have the negotiations with the agency for maybe a week or something, and then they finally decided to buy us tickets to fly back. And there were lots of negotiations, and we were almost doing it unilaterally. So they were not very happy about our actions because, as I said, lots of artists just stayed inside of China right now, and they're still staying there. Like not only artists, models, and even though nothing works there at the moment, and everything's closed down, and even for the models, the photo session sets and everything's closed down. So there's no actual work going on. But for them, as I realized, it's simpler to keep the artists inside because they have the contracts and stuff like that. And I know that international companies, they actually send their employees back to the countries like back to Belarus, Germany. But it's not about. I think it's only about some businesses, not just show business.
Yeah,
show business is different.
Yeah. So do you have plans to go back and do these dates that you missed?
Well, I think it doesn't have much sense right now because, as far as I know, the venue is going to be closed down for quite a while right now. At least they say that the venues might be closed until the end of March or something like that. I'm not sure. Of course, China is very fast in terms of making things happen because when we sometimes were completely amazed by how fast they react. So I mean, like for example, when they built the fences all around the areas just in one day, they just appeared from somewhere. Yeah. And it was all over the country. I mean, they sometimes do things so fast that it's very hard to predict. Maybe they can handle this virus very fast. But at least the information, there was information that it might take several months. I even heard the information from some Chinese people that it might take time until summer, something like that. So it's like very long time. Okay. I don't know why. Maybe rumors. I'm not sure. I would not be spreading rumors like that. But it was some information that came from some business people, and they said that it might be the case.
Okay. And you have written this song about coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, quite a wild virus is kind of quite a good theme for an EDM song. What inspired you to write about it?
Lots of things, actually. I mean, it was not a pleasant thing that happened because I mean, not even talking about people dying and stuff like that, but we were inside of this whole thing, and there were several things that shocked us. First of all, how it all happened and how the situation changed in China, because everything was like zombie apocalypse. It really was, because when we went out in the streets, we saw lots of people with they were checking everybody entering some places and areas. As I said, that there were fences all around living areas. They separated all living areas, and you had to enter every living area by walking through like a. They measured the temperature, and they did all kinds of actions to check if you're a suspicious person to enter this area. That's one thing, and lots of people appeared in the supermarkets, and they were checking temperature and taking a look if you look all right. So it looked very differently. It's like a movie, really. It was like a zombie apocalypse, really. Everybody was wearing masks, and everything really changed. It was not the China we used to see, but that was just an unusual thing. But the other thing was, of course, that there were actions taken by the police which we did not expect, and that was very hard because they passed the law in a couple of days. We didn't know about this because China shoots videos all the time. You would be walking in the street and somebody might be filming you when you don't even see this. They just have this habit of just filming everything with a phone. Mm-hmm. And in the country like that, you would not expect police taking you just for taking pictures or making videos, because it's like unthinkable. Everybody does it. But what we did, we were just taking some small videos of this apocalyptic China. And I mean, it was not especially that. We were just, we had a couple of pictures and videos before, and we were doing the last ones when we were about to leave China. But we were taken by the police, and at first we didn't even know what's going on because we were kept waiting for an hour in the street. We were completely, like we were freezing to death. And nobody could explain what's going on and what we're doing there. We had to wait for some officials, and they were coming up and up. And finally, we managed to assemble about 10 people around us, 10 police people. And then the super big boss came, and then he started handling the situation. So we were taken, we were put in the police car and taken to the police station. And there was a long process going on. Luckily, we had some people who handled the situation, like two managers that came, and they were trying to solve this problem. And then we finally realized that we finally learned that we could not take any pictures of China in this state of quarantine, because China is very. The government is trying to somehow fight this problem of China losing the reputation because of the quarantine. Lots of people and businesses just leave China, and that's the thing that they don't want. And this is why they actually passed this law that you cannot be shooting any footage in the street unless you're a journalist. And then you have to be officially accredited for that. So you have to have the license and stuff like that. I mean, we were not doing anything special. It was like just we filmed the street. We were doing the normal thing, walking around the street. But the streets changed a lot, and there was official people at all kinds of entrances, and probably they didn't want this information to fly away from China and just be spread all over. We managed to save a little bit of this information, even though they actually took all our flash drives and cameras, but we were lucky to save a little bit of this information, because while we were going in the police car, our drummer actually copied the information over Wi-Fi to his phone. So we managed to sneak a little bit of the information, and it's actually how we managed to build this video that we made. Yeah, well, it was hard. We were talking, it was like a real movie, so many things happening.
Well, we just hope the Chinese government isn't listening to you admitting that now. So when did you actually leave China?
We managed to leave China on the 1st of February. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened when you got back to Belarus then?
Well, actually, first we had to fly to Warsaw. And then there was a flight from Warsaw to Minsk. In Warsaw, nothing actually happened. It was like I would call this situation a little bit xenophobic because all Chinese for some reason were checked very hard, and since we were like maybe we just looked like Polish people, nobody actually. Made any check of us. It was very strange. Nobody even asked us a question, even though we stepped off the same plane. So the first, when we were in Warsaw, nothing happened at all. Is as if we didn't come from China. We actually expected much more actions because, we thought that the EU would react in a somehow, I don't know, stricter way. But it was there was nothing. And then when we came back to Belarus, we actually, it was not actually so hard as well, because there were no strict actions. And the customs officers said that we can actually pass go to a special check if we want. It was not so, we were not made to go there, but they were very kind and said like, you might do this, and we actually did, because we were a little bit worried about ourselves. Because it's better to be on the safe side. But anyway, we made the small check, but afterwards all of my guys, all the bandmates, they actually they got calls from their doctors, and they were asked to stay inside and check the temperature. And there's also one more option, like taking some blood test, but nobody was actually invited for this one. I don't know why. But so basically we were all asked to stay inside for 2 weeks and check our temperature and report how we feel. So it's like this.
So you've been inside for a week. You've been in this flat alone. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, it's very, unpleasant feeling actually, because when you're in the tour and you haven't seen your family for a while, and then you come and see nobody, it's pretty, it's almost like I'm on a real quarantine here.
Yeah, and you have 2 children, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so have you been able to speak to them at least?
Well, yeah, it's just the same as if I'm in China right now. It just makes very little difference. I just talk to them over the video calls.
Yeah.
So,
and are they worried, or have you managed to keep them calm?
Oh, they are all right. they realize that I'm gonna be okay, because they know that their father is a rock and roller. They know how I'm gonna be good.
Okay. And how much longer will you have to stay in this flat alone before you can be released back into the wild?
Well, I think 1 more week. I don't know. I mean, the doctor actually says that we have to stay inside for 2 weeks. But I mean, it's just about being good. And I mean, of course, you can misbehave in a situation like that, because I don't have guards near my apartment, so I can actually walk. But I'll try to keep it safe for everybody.
Yeah. So has the government there taken any other action? Is there anything else that you will need to do, or that other people coming from China will need to do in Belarus?
Well, I think that there might be some special actions that are taken towards the people that came from Wuhan, probably like this. But I don't actually have the full information about this, because since we didn't come from Wuhan exactly, I mean, luckily we were not there. We were pretty much close. Zhengzhou is close to it, but it's not. We haven't been there. Mm-hmm. Pardon?
Sorry. We were just wondering, have you heard of any other cases of coronavirus in Belarus?
Unfortunately, I cannot, say for sure about that. I mean, nobody told me about that, but I was not checking it specifically. So there might be something, but I'm not sure.
But you and the band all seem healthy just now.
Yeah, we're fine. We used to have some things. I mean, we even made a joke about this, because we had our drama when we were there in China. He actually had all the symptoms, and even this hard sneezing thing that everybody writes about. Like, because it's very hard to distinguish between the flu, cold, or anything else, and this coronavirus, because it seems like a usual thing when you get cold. Yeah. When you get it cold, it would just be just the same. But they told that there are some special traits, like your hard sneezing and stuff like that. And we had this problem with our drummer because he had all the symptoms exactly as they were described. But the funny thing is that he had the symptoms maybe like a couple of days before we actually got the information about this. But he got back to normal pretty soon, and we said well, okay, it just probably doesn't work for the Slav people because we're stronger. It just doesn't work for us. Well, I mean, I don't know if it really was like this. We didn't check, but at least it's due to all the symptoms, and exactly they stressed some traits of the virus and how it works. It really looked like that, and we said Pasha, you have very strong health, and we really made a joke about that because there are some things that are a little bit different. Like, for example, Slavs. I mean, I don't know how for sure it is like this, but for sure, the Slavs are considered to be harder drinkers than the Chinese, and we said well, maybe we just in general we managed to cope with this virus pretty easily just because of that. Because there was another joke about this that the virus is this virus is afraid of alcohol. Somebody said it was so funny. Okay, I mean, if it's like that, well, then the puzzle comes together very easily.
If it doesn't like alcohol, then I'm sure a rock and roll band on tour is one of the safest places to be, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't even close down the clubs and pubs then because everybody would be safe in those places. It would be at the best place, to get rid of the virus.
Yeah. Well, Vic, thank you so much for joining us. I do hope that you are fine. I really hope you get home to see your kids soon. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been really fascinating talking to you.
Thank you, Kenyon. Thank you very much.
Growing concerns about
so we are joined
coronavirus from China. The number of cases has gone from a few dozen last week to nearly 300 now, and health officials have confirmed that the virus can.
Horror movie, horror. We got this bad bitch because we all deserve it. Long riders breaking through the violence, breaking through the outbreak of coronavirus. Sodom and Gomorrah, horror movie, horror. We got this bad bitch because we all deserve it. Long riders breaking through the violence, breaking through the outbreak of coronavirus. Horror, we got the splat pitch because we all deserve it.